I'm Sarah M. Eden. I write historical fiction and historical romance. I have a bachelor's degree in research, a deep fascination with history, and an abiding love of stories. My 69th published book, Wyoming Wild, will hit shelves in March of 2023. Wyoming Wild is a Western romance set in Wyoming Territory in 1876. U.S. Marshal John Hocking learns of a threat against his life in a small town at the edge of the territory he oversees. Arriving in disguise, he forms an alliance with the daughter of the town's corrupt sheriff to try to bring down and bring an end to his rule of tyranny, but doing so puts both of their lives and both of their hearts at risk. Wyoming Wild is set in the same universe as my books, The Sheriffs of Savage Wells and Healing Hearts. Marshal Hocking was always one of my absolute favorite supporting characters in those books. He's funny and witty, he's brave and courageous, he is shockingly competent, but he's also very much a mystery. And I knew it was time for him to get his own story, and that is what Wyoming Wild is. Liesl, the heroine of Wyoming Wild, grows up in an emotionally abusive home with a father who she knows firsthand is more than capable of violence. When we first meet her, the start of this book, she is enduring as best she can. She's doing whatever she's able to safeguard her town and her family from her father's wrath and tyranny. She has survived, but she's never really had a chance to heal. And I knew it was really important for her to begin that journey of healing in this book. Obviously, a lifetime of abusive treatment can't be overcome or healed from in a matter of months, but I knew she needed to start. And I knew that to allow that to happen, she needed some things she hadn't ever really had before. She needed a place where she was safe, which she hadn't ever had. She needed legitimate choices in life, which she also had never had. And she needed to finally be surrounded by people who were willing and able to be a buffer as well as a cheering section for her while she's doing the difficult work of leaving behind her former life and building a new one. Watching her bravery and her determination and her growth as she takes those steps was one of my favorite things about writing Wyoming Wild. One of the most crucial elements of romantic tension is obstacles. Something has to get in the way of two people who are drawn to each other actually being together. In Wyoming Wild, the Western setting itself is rife with almost unavoidable obstacles. The distance between places, the time it took to travel and to communicate, the dangers inherent in the rough and too often violent towns of this era, the demands on the time and emotions of the U.S. Marshal, the inherent vulnerability of women in this era and in this location. So many things stand in the way of any two people coming together. But when we add to that the difficulty of trying to clandestinely bring down a powerful criminal who also happens to be the father of one half of our potential couple, and chasing down the possibility of love begins to feel impossible. And that is a recipe for delicious romantic tension. Part of what makes the Wild West feel so romantic in fiction is that we are presented with a very romanticized version of what life was actually like. The more horrible and miserable and cruel aspects of life in the Wild West are often generally not focused on, which allows us to spend time with the aspects of it that are appealing. There's an equal amount of danger and possibility in life in this fictionalized world and time. Neither one feels limited at all. So the stakes are about as high as they can get because of how much danger there is, but the payoff for success is enormous because we don't feel like the possibilities are limited in this setting. There's something incredibly appealing about that juxtaposition. And I think that is what brings us back again and again to the fictional world of the Wild West. Writing historical fiction is a unique opportunity to share aspects of history that readers might not otherwise know or think about. I can't, in the course of a single novel, obviously cover every single aspect of a time and place. That's just impossible. But I make a point of including in the stories I write something about history that's fascinating or unusual or overlooked. Maybe a lesser known historical figure, or the unexpected consequences of a law, or general expectations of an era. The impact of a significant event in history on the ordinary people who lived through it. The tapestry of history is made up of so many unique threads, and getting to highlight those is one of my favorite things about writing historical fiction. It can also, however, be a real challenge. Writing a romance in a Western setting, like with Wyoming Wild, means that the swoony moments and the tender connection always happen against a backdrop of near constant danger and threat. Disease destroyed entire towns. Droughts and destructive weather destroyed livelihoods and ended lives. There was a lawlessness to this era and area that made staying safe a very real and constant struggle. Acknowledging that and allowing it to be part of these characters' lives makes it tricky to have those lighthearted romantic moments. But I also think it means that when they do happen, they're that much more powerful. I have on my desk a sticky note with a reminder to me of what some of my guiding principles are as a writer. And on it are only 3 words: progressing, healthy, and overlooked. Progressing because I want to write about people who are working toward becoming the best versions of themselves that they can be. They're flawed, they have weaknesses, they make mistakes, they make bad decisions, they get things wrong, but they're trying, and they're motivated by a desire to be a good person. Those are the kind of characters I want to go on a journey with, so they're the kind of characters I write about. It's one of my favorite things about Hawk in Wyoming Wild. His strongest motivator is the desire to do the right thing, but he lives in a time and place that's really complicated. And he has a job that often is really contradictory, so he doesn't always know what the right thing to do is. His biggest moments of character growth and struggle come from that deep desire to do and be good when it feels impossible to him to know what that even means. You can't help cheering for someone like that. Healthy is the next word I wrote on that sticky note because I want to write about relationships that are at their heart healthy. They won't always be sunshine and roses. There will be struggles along the way, but I want to write about the kind of relationships that if someone I cared about was in a relationship like the one I am writing about and holding up as something to be celebrated, that I wouldn't be worried about their physical, mental, or emotional well-being. That's the kind of relationships I want to write. And in Wyoming Wild, we have a U.S. Marshal who's accustomed to giving orders and being obeyed and having his authority be the thing that often fixes issues. And then we have a woman who has had to make herself very small and outwardly passive in order to be safe in her own home. It would be so easy for them to fall into a relationship where one partner is domineering and the other is submissive, to build a connection that isn't one of respect and equality, one where kindness and consideration isn't a priority. But neither is willing to settle for that. The relationship they want is a healthy one worth working for and celebrating. And those are the kind of relationships I love watching my characters fight for. The last word on my sticky note is overlooked. As a disabled and chronically ill person, I spend a lot of years trying to find books in which people like me weren't relegated to one-dimensional side characters or plot elements meant to make the other characters look better, or who exist for the purpose of tugging at the reader's emotions. I decided when I started writing that I would include characters who were like me, who live with disability and illness, but who were more than those struggles, who were full and rich characters whose disabilities didn't exist as a plot point or to fix something. I decided that even if people like me were overlooked in fiction in general, we wouldn't be overlooked in the books that I write. The cast of characters in Wyoming Wild and the other books in this universe are filled with what would traditionally be overlooked people. Among them is Andrew, a Civil War veteran who served as a very young boy and returned with what we would today recognize as PTSD. The behaviors he has adopted to cope and to function, rather than being a reason for dismissal by the town he lives in or pity, are understood by them. And he is valued for what he is able to do and not merely in spite of what he struggles with. We have Miriam, who's the town nurse. She has a chronic and incurable illness that at this time meant being rejected out of hand by her family, by the society she grew up in, and tossed aside by the medical establishment. The time and effort she put into learning how to see to her own medical needs gave her the skills to be a tremendously good nurse and the bone-deep compassion to really truly care for the people of this town. She isn't magically cured of her illness. It doesn't go away. It's part of who she is, but it isn't the entirety of who she is. And we have Tansy, who is one of my favorite characters. She might, in a less kind town, be labeled the town eccentric. She has some intellectual differences. The town helps when her understanding of things falls short, and she, with her courage and steadfastness, has literally saved lives. She isn't endured in her struggles. She isn't relegated to this side character who just teaches a lesson. She doesn't exist in the story in order to show how good everyone else is. She is herself valued and important and multifaceted and amazing. I love being able to write characters like this, characters who deserve to not be overlooked. For readers, I want Wyoming Wild to be a swoony, exciting, entertaining adventure. Over the course of the story, I hope readers laugh and sigh, try to solve the mystery, hold their breath as danger lurks around the corner. I hope it is an enjoyable escape, a fun tiptoe into a bygone era, and a story that leaves them hopeful and joyful and highly entertained. I can be found on Instagram and Facebook, as well as my website, sarahmeden.com. Wyoming Wild will be available in March 2023, wherever books are sold.